Okay, real progressives. This is Geoff Ginter. It's Wednesday, August 1st. Dear God, summer's half over. I am not built for time moving this quickly. It just seems like yesterday I was only 47 times around the sun, and now I'm 48 and going on 49 times around the sun. This is wrong. This is wrong, and this must stop. And I need your help. But it's not going to happen. All right. I'm just going to have to get over it. So, I actually was struggling with what today's show should be about. And I'd had a lot of suggestions from different people. And again, goes without saying, if anyone has something they would like me to talk about, and I don't care what it is, I'm not saying I'm going to, but if there's something you feel I need to go into further detail about, anything you would like me to say, a show you would like me to focus on, just let me know. Private message me, put a comment in the links underneath, and we'll see. We'll have a conversation. But it just seems to me that so many people that I speak to, and I think this is getting better, but so many people I speak to still get caught up in the economics. I do talk about modern money in my shows. Sometimes I talk about it more than others. Mostly I just focus on single-payer healthcare, why we don't have it, why we need to have it, how important it is, and how we can go about getting it. And it's in the going about getting it that I do talk about modern money, MMT, modern monetary theory. I hate calling it theory. I think that's bullshit. But I have gotten a lot of questions about it, and I still have a lot of people that say that, yes, this is a wonderful idea. We should absolutely be doing this, but there's just no way to do it. It's incredibly expensive. The taxes would have to go up. I don't want my taxes going up, and of course, I don't want my tax dollars going towards them. So there's certainly a lot of people out there who would be on our side, who would be on the side of life, who would be on the side of love and happiness and joy and trying to build a great society, who would be trying to do that which has never been done before. And I promise you, it's never been done. Go back through history, it has never, ever, ever been done. They call America the great experiment, and it is. And I'm telling you, it's not going very well right now. But it can. We have all the tools that we need right now. We have it all. And I'm going to start, as I have several times before, especially since July 4th, when this has really been in my head. I just want to, before we begin, for the people that are going to say, well, it's not the federal government's job to do apparently anything, depending upon who you speak to. But we, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, to establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. Now that's pretty damn cool. And I get that that can be interpreted in a wide variety of ways. But if you look at the Constitution, for those that don't know, that was the preamble, the opening statement for the Constitution. Lets us know this is who we are, this is what we want to accomplish. And the rest of the Constitution outlines how specifically they would like to go about accomplishing it. But even before the ink was dry on the Constitution, they amended it 10 times. We call it the Bill of Rights. So the Constitution is a living document. It must be reinterpreted. It must be reevaluated. It must be reexamined. Does it still hold true to the values that we are trying to instill today? So someone might be able to look to the Constitution or look to the preamble and say, yes, promote the general welfare, but secure the blessings of liberty. My blessings of liberty says I need to make a lot of money. And capitalism says you're not supposed to get in my way. Okay, fair enough. That's what you think, that's what you believe. Let's hope to God you never fall on hard times. Let's hope to God you never need help from anyone. And if you ever do need help, I hope you understand when people will right and left be giving you the fucking middle finger. It is my hope that that never happens. I don't wish you to fall on hard times. And if you do, I hope there will be people who will be around you who will help you. Because everyone deserves redemption. Everyone deserves it. So, we get to reinterpret the Constitution. I look at a document like that and I say, promote the general welfare to the general population. Government is in the service of the people. This is why Abraham Lincoln called it a government of, for, and by the people. And if you need further evidence of what we're talking about here, the Declaration of Independence contains, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. Now, of course, we have to call bullshit a little bit here. All men are created equal. Fuck that. All men, women, all carbon-based life forms created equal. See, we always have to reinterpret. We always have to make sure, is it still living up to our modern values? It does not. On the macro, it does. Life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness. Among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But we have to include all genders, all races, all faiths. And that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. Meaning, everyone gets to pursue life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and other things, because it says among these. We are, by our birthright, allowed to pursue life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, etc. And that it is government's job to make sure that we have the ability to do so. So yeah, it is government's job. It is absolutely government's job. Hands down. So in discussing what I want to talk about, before we even talk about modern money and what it is not, what its implications are, I want to be able to outline for us why it's important. Why is it important that we understand modern money? In my opinion, it is important because it's the only way we're going to get the things that we want. Because for 40 years, we have had a contraction of the economy for the working people. For the poor, forget about it. For the destitute, no one cares about you as far as the economy is concerned. For the middle class, even the wealthy, getting smaller and smaller because they're getting more and more and more. And we have fallen for this because we have been told that there's only so much money available. I'd love to give you single-payer health care. Free college tuition sounds great, but how are you going to pay for it? We don't have the money. So we need to understand what we're talking about. We need to make a clear delineation between your household, a corporation, a state, and the federal government. The issuer of the currency versus the users of the currency. There is a world of difference, and we're going to talk about why that is. And once you understand why, I think you're going to agree that we have tons of space, tons of what Stephanie Kelton calls policy space, to be able to do the things that we want to do. Well, what is it that we want to do? That's a good question, and open to interpretation. In my opinion, the things that I want to do. Single-payer health care. As far as in the richest country in the world, how is it possible? How is it permissible that there should be anyone unable to see a doctor because they can't afford it? How is it permissible that anyone should ever be homeless or destitute because they got bankrupted due to medical bills? How is any of this possible? There's a lot of people who will give you a lot of answers. My answer, greed. Pure and simple. It's power. Greed not necessarily in the form of money. Greed in the form of I want. I fear lack. I fear there not being enough, so I will hoard as much as I can. And oh my God, with all this money, look at what I can do. I and play you all like marionettes, like little puppets. To me, that's the addiction. I am the Lord thy master, and thou shalt do as I tell you to. That's fun. And if everyone had access to single-payer healthcare, if everyone had health care regardless of the rest of their circumstances, including their employment, well, they wouldn't necessarily need your employment now, would they? How many people out there, raise your hands, have the job that they have, not because it's their dream to have this job, not because they've always dreamed of having a job like this, but because they need the health care. I need it for my kids. I need it for my family. I am not so much married to my job, so much as I am enslaved to my job. Single-payer health care puts the kibosh on that pretty goddamn effectively. But it's not the only thing that we could have. Federal job guarantee. In addition to single-payer health care, one of the other things that would liberate us from the horrors of indentured servitude to the private employers would be the ability to say, you know what, I don't dig these conditions. You're not doing enough for your workers. You don't pay us enough. You don't pay me enough for this shit. It's unsafe conditions. Or you can say to a town that's not living up to your expectations, but you can't leave because you have a job here. If you have a federal job guarantee, you are guaranteed a job by the federal government. It will be paid for by the federal government, but it will be administered locally. You go to any municipality, any small town to a big city, and you ask them, if money were no object, what would you do? What are the needs of your town, of your city, of your community that are not currently being met? And then let your imagination go wild. Forget about the needs that aren't being met. How about some of the wants? Some of the things you would love to do if only there were money in the budget to be able to do it. Now ask them, after they give you that long list, now ask them, why isn't it getting done? It's not profitable. Who's going to make profit off of doing that? Well, the federal government doesn't need profit. And by the time I'm done tonight, hopefully you'll understand why. So the federal government institutes a federal job guarantee. Communities get strengthened, revitalized. Look at all the dust bowls that we have made out of small town America. Real diehard Trump country. Why are they diehard Trump? Trump promised them jobs. Well, here's a jobs program. And the federal government can make it a living wage, come up with all kinds of benefits. You couple that with single-payer health care, and no one is ever going to be held to having to be indentured to an employer. You don't pay me enough for this. You don't give me safe working conditions. You don't give me paid time off. You don't give me the things that I need. Well, you're going to pay me more, or I'm going to do the federal job guarantee. It'll be a living wage. It's not going to be Shangri-La. No one is going to be in the federal job guarantee, and keeping up with the Kardashians, but no one will ever be destitute ever again. There will be an eradication of poverty. Everyone gets a job who wants one. We couple this with expanded Social Security. Some people will say, with a UBI, whatever. So that those that don't want to work don't have to. Maybe they'll earn less than if they had a job, but no one has to be homeless. No one has to be poor. Poverty goes away. Single-payer health care, a federal job guarantee. Just think of the possibilities. And if you think about those possibilities, think of free college tuition. Everyone, every election cycle I've ever been alive to experience has always told us that education is the silver bullet. Education is the answer. And God knows, by the time I was in my 20s, a university education was to the 1990s and later what a high school education was to the 1940s and after. You didn't need a university education to walk away with a great living back in the 40s, 50s, and 60s, and even in the 70s and the 80s. By the time we got into the 90s, you needed a university education, or you weren't going to be doing much more than flipping burgers or saying, have a nice day, please shop again. And there's nothing wrong with those professions, but they don't pay much. And we can do something about that. Federal job guarantee, single-payer health care, free college tuition. We could drastically revitalize what our society looks like. And because there's no point in having any of this if we all die anyway, implement 100% green energy right now. I challenge you. Just go online. You won't have to look far. You will find that green energy is ready to go. It is prêt-à-porter. There's just not enough political will to make it happen. And the private industries that are doing it can't make enough profit to be able to make sure that it happens, to compete with fossil fuels. So we need a federal government that doesn't give a shit about how much it costs to do something. They simply have to recognize that something needs to be done. That global warming is real, or climate change, whatever you want to call it. It's real, we are causing it, and something has to be done 10 years ago. But since it's not going to happen 10 years ago, what are we going to do today? And we can drastically change our carbon footprint. It just takes political will, because the cash we have. We're going to talk about that in just a moment. When we have all these things, and hopefully while we're doing these things, we can export peace instead of war. Look at all the problems that we have globally, and look at what America has been doing. Look at all the problems we have with immigration. Look at all the different wars that we are fighting or contributing to. The just devastating famine in Yemen, the worst famine in the history of famines, and we are funding that war. We don't have boots on the ground doing it, as far as I know, but we are sure as shit dumping millions upon millions upon millions of dollars to make sure that it continues. We got problems that we are desperately in need of changing, and we are directly involved in Afghanistan, in Syria, in Iraq, in Venezuela. All over the world, we've got our fingers in pies because we want to have control. Somehow we think that's going to make us safe, or at least that's what they're selling. It's really just for corporations. It's really just for profit. But at the end of the day, I don't give a shit what it's for. I give a shit about what it's doing. No matter what it is you think you're doing, exporting democracy, if you just come right out and say that I fucking want the oil, I want their resources, there's nothing you can say that is either evil or altruistic that will make the outcomes we are currently experiencing in these parts of the world and making it okay. Just for God's sakes, look at what's happening in Palestine. This is not okay. These people do not have a standing army. I don't care what you think about the PLO. There's nothing that makes what's the death toll in Palestine okay. There's nothing that makes it okay. No amount of self-defense is worth that kind of one-sided destruction, or any kind of destruction. If we get 100% green energy, and we do it domestically, we can turn our military into a weapon of war and turn it into one of peace and technology, and maybe space exploration. These are political choices, and they may have economic ramifications, but we are a sovereign nation. That means we also have sovereign money. Non-convertible, free-floating, fiat currency. Now, before I get into it, I really need you guys to take a look at this. Hang on a second. I'm not sure this is going to work. Yeah. There we go. That'll work just a little bit better. It's very important because what we're about to talk about, I'm going to explain it. I'm going to do my very best. And I also, have my phone here if I can take some time to take a look at what you're saying. Helen, our military should be used for good like infrastructure. Absolutely, Kelly. Yeah, that's a good use for it. But I want to make sure that we understand who the real experts are. Warren Mosler, Stephanie Kelton, Randall Wray, Pavlina Chernova, Bill Mitchell, Stephen Hale, Fidel Kaboub, Scott Fulweiler, and the most amazing teachers, Ellis Winningham, he's amazing, Mike Norman, Rowan Gray. There are so many. What I'm about to explain to you, I want you to share. I want you to start having conversations with people because we desperately need this to be understood. But what I really need you to do, just to be able to understand it, just to make sure that you are clear on your facts, just follow these people. Talk to them. Watch their videos, read their articles. It's not rocket science. There was a time when I didn't understand any of this. There was a time when I thought that it was that we needed to tax the rich before we could do anything. There was a time when I thought that money was scarce and that it was only so much of it. I'm going to play you this again. Just write down these names. Warren Mosler, the father of modern monetary theory. Stephanie Kelton, my personal hero. She gave me my first aha moment. We're going to be talking a lot about her tonight. Randy Wray, a very, very interesting talker. Pavlina Chernova, the mistress of the job guarantee. Bill Mitchell, the father of the job guarantee. Stephen Hale, Fidel Kaboub, Scott Fulweiler, all excellent, excellent communicators of modern monetary theory. Ellis Winningham, just follow him. He is amazing. He'll explain everything. Mike Norman, Rowan Gray, these are other experts, legal experts, monetary experts. They will be able to help you out. So I want to be able to begin, if we're trying to talk about why we can afford things. First things first, most people will think, because they have been told again and again and again and again that the U.S. government is just like a household. Well, you can't spend beyond your means. You can't possibly do that. It's fiscally irresponsible for you to be able to spend more than you're taking in. You'd have to borrow money, and you can't do that for long. You can't expect the federal government to do any less. Well, yes, I can. Because the federal government ain't nothing at all like a household. Let me ask you this. Do you have a printing press of currency in your basement? Do you have any mechanism through which you can print currency and force people to accept it? You can go into any place and I'll give you Geoff dollars. I'll give you Geoff bucks. If I make Geoff dollars, how the hell am I going to make people take it? I'm not going to be able to buy groceries with it. I'm certainly not going to be able to pay my mortgage with it. I'm sure as shit not going to be able to pay my taxes with it. So what good is it? And if I try to print US dollars, well, that's called counterfeiting. And I will go to jail. So first, I want to be able to show you something. Stephanie Kelton just recently did a talk in England, and she put some things in really stark relief. I want to play you something and talk about it for a second.
Taxes, because we need the money. Obviously, we're the sole manufacturer of the currency. Why would we tax to get it? We create it, we issue it. Okay, so taxes do other stuff. They allow the government to spend money into the economy without inflating the economy, without causing inflation. If I want to spend $1 trillion into the economy on infrastructure and I say, I don't need the revenue, so I'm not going to tax anything out, holy moly, you might get an inflation problem just spending $1 trillion in. So the question becomes, how much can you safely spend to mobilize resources that are currently unused, right? Unemployment. You have construction workers, architects, engineers, you have steel, you have concrete, you have machinery that's not being used by anyone in the economy. So you're not going to crowd it out. You say, aha, I'm going to spend hiring these construction workers, that engineer, that architect. I'm going to take these machines that move heavy stuff and make concrete. I'm going to hire all these things, and I'm going to spend on that. And if I try to do too much, I'm going to get an inflation problem. So I'm going to have to pull some income out of the economy, tax some money out in order to guard against the risk of inflation. So taxes do that. Taxes are important because they help redistribute income. They take income away from people if you think they have too much. So taxes play an important role there. They incentivize or disincentivize behaviors. You might provide tax incentives to encourage people to drive electric cars, or to discourage people from smoking or eating too much sugar or whatever. So taxes do important things, but Rummel's point was you don't need them in order to raise revenue. That's not what they do. Okay, so go back.
So I wanted to start with that one. And first, before we even continue, Stephanie Kelton, for those that don't know her, she's currently a professor at Stony Brook University in New York State. She was the economic advisor to Bernie Sanders' presidential campaign. And before that, she was the chief economist in the House Budget Committee on the Democrat side. So this is a woman who really knows what she's talking about. And she has been studying modern monetary theory for the better part of 20 years. And in fact, her first foray into it was specifically trying to debunk Warren Mosler, who was the father of modern monetary theory. He had been having a paper out and trying to get economists to read it. And she first saw it and tried hard to disprove it, and couldn't. She couldn't come up with a way to disprove it. And so she has been studying it with a group of economists, and it's been gaining ground. So that's just a little background about who you just saw. But I wanted to start with that because everyone keeps coming down to taxes. We always have to raise taxes to be able to get what we want. But no. Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution clearly states that the Congress, and only Congress, can create the currency. It shall tell you what the currency is worth, and it shall levy taxes. These gets us one giant understanding from these three things. That first, if you try to create the currency of the United States, you will go to prison. 20 years in prison for knowingly creating and or passing counterfeit bills. Only the federal government can create currency. They shall tell you how much it's worth. How much is $1 worth? Well, there was a time when it was worth a certain amount of gold. We call that the gold standard. And for the vast majority of our history, we were on a gold standard. $1 was worth X amount of gold. For the sake of this discussion, let's just say that $1 was worth 1 pound of gold. This is something that Ellis Winningham does all the time as a means of trying to explain the gold standard. $1, 1 pound of gold. The single most expensive dollar in the history of the world, but just to keep math simple. So if we have $100 billion worth of gold, and we have promised to convert every dollar for 1 pound of gold, 100 billion pounds of gold, I could only have $1 billion in circulation. So I spend, and if I need to spend $120 billion for whatever project it is that I'm doing just $100 billion isn't going to cut it. I need more money. Well, I have taxed you, and now I'm going to take $20 billion that I have taxed, and I will be able to recirculate that money in, and my project is covered, and I spent now this fiscal year $120 billion, but still only $100 billion is in circulation. Okay? $100 billion in gold, $100 billion in circulation. I need $20 billion, so I'm going to tax back out $20 billion, recycle it. It's the same $100 billion in circulation. Therefore, the gold reserves have been defended. But I needed your tax dollars to be able to do that. Hence the myth that taxes pay for things, because there was a time when it did. Well, let's say, for example, that I actually need more than $120 billion. I'm actually going to need $150 billion. well, I can only tax out so much before I destroy the economy. If I tax out 100, 100 billion, and I only spent 100 billion, no one has any money left. That's no good. So what I can do, I need 120, so I'm going to tax 20 billion, use that. I need another 30 billion. Well, who's got extra money? Well, the poor don't have it. They need every dollar they can get their hands on to be able to fund their lives. But the rich just always seem to find a way to accumulate more. And so they have all this idle money that they're not doing anything with. It's not earning them anything. Well, I say, I need another $30 billion. Here's a treasury bond. $30 billion in treasury bonds. Who wants them? I'm going to earn you interest. You lend me that money. Article 1, Section 8 allows the federal government to do that. You lend me that money. I'll give you a treasury security. And when it becomes due, 5 years, 10 years, however long you've made it for, I'll pay it back and I'll give you interest. I'll give you extra money. That's free money. In the modern era, we call this corporate welfare. So on a gold standard, the federal government would have to tax and borrow to be able to fully fund its programs. But what happens when you're not on a gold standard? What happens when you get off of it? Well, in the 1930s rather, we were in the midst of the Depression, and FDR took us off the gold standard so that he could spend big, so we could spend on a jobs program, so we could spend big and get us out of the Great Depression, and then continue on in World War II so that we could help beat the Axis powers, win World War II. And after World War II, after all the devastation of war, all the surviving countries got together in Bretton Woods, New Hampshire, and decided on a new monetary system to help rebuild. What's the monetary system going to look like post-war? And all the countries but one pegged their economy, their currencies, to the US dollar. And the US dollar pegged its currency back to gold for the purposes of trying to create stability, predictability, so that countries that were war-torn, that needed to rebuild, could be able to plan successfully into the future and be able to do so well. And it worked well, kind of. More modern economies chugged along just fine. Emerging economies were constantly going into recession and coming back, in recession, coming back. It's only when the United States needed to spend big on Vietnam that Richard Nixon in '71 finally said, that's it, no more gold standard, Bretton Woods is dissolved, and we have been on a non-convertible, meaning the US dollar is not converted into anything, free floating, meaning its relative value floats freely against the value of other currencies, fiat currency, meaning the federal government now decides the size of the money supply. Whereas it used to be constrained by the availability of gold, a commodity, a finite resource. It now is no longer constrained by that. It can spend as much as it needs to in order to be able to fund its programs. But remember what Stephanie Kelton said, and this is incredibly important. We do have restrictions. It's called inflation. If you spend too much beyond the ability of the population of the country to be able to produce goods and services for that money to purchase, then we run into an inflationary problem. How much of an inflationary problem? That depends. And we can talk about that later if you like. But we do have restrictions. It's our real resources, the ability of the country to produce goods and services. So just to drive this home a little bit, I want to play this, what Stephanie said about the gold standard.
And it traps us in a frame of mind where we're all basically walking around as if we're still operating on a gold standard. Because that's what it means to say, find the money. It's like there's something out there. It's money. It exists. Where is it? Who has it? How much of it is there? And how much of it can you extract via taxes, borrowing? How much can you raise to get revenue to finance whatever it is the government is trying to carry out?
So that's what it's like to be on a gold standard. You're forever looking for the money, because gold is finite. And for so long as you have decided to peg your dollar to a certain amount of gold, you have promised the population, the citizens of your country, You come to the Federal Reserve and you give me your cash, and I will give you gold in exchange at a fixed rate. And of course, the federal government can always change it. Like they could always say, well, it used to be worth 1 pound of gold, but unfortunately, now it's only going to be worth half a pound of gold. I have devalued the dollar. It's a political choice. Or they could spend more currency, willy-nilly, woohoo, look at what we can do, and spend well beyond the ability of people to be able to exchange it for gold. And if everyone decides to exchange their gold all at once, they'll decide to discover that you have kind of screwed them. But that's only when you have a gold standard. When you have put your arms behind your back. I can't find the money. I don't have the gold reserves. I can only have so much currency in circulation. This is the thinking that people are still grasping with. Every time you have a politician who says, how are you going to pay for it? Every politician, every bobblehead on television that says, we can't afford it. We have a huge debt and a deficit. They're either lying to you because they don't want you to have single-payer health care. They don't want you to have free college education. They don't want a federal job guarantee. They don't want you to be anything other than compliant workers. They're either lying to you and they need to get the hell out of Washington, get the hell off TV, or they don't know what they're talking about, in which case they need to get the hell out of Washington and get off of TV. Either way, I don't want to see them anymore. I don't want to have discussions about how you're going to pay for it. That's a trap. They want you to be able to name the enemy. Who is going to pay for it? It's not how you're going to pay for it. They want you to say who's going to pay for it. They want you to say it's going to be the rich. They want you to say it's going to be Wall Street. Last week I did a show about the American dream. Everyone thinks they're going to be rich one day. Everyone is planning for the day when they're going to be rich. And the rich want you to still believe that. Not because they're eager and just want you to join their ranks. No, far fucking from. They want you to think that one day you're going to be rich too, so that you will help them fight back against people like me who are telling you that we can have single-payer health care and a federal job guarantee and green energy right now. They want you to help them fight their battles for them. So stop it. We're not on a gold standard. It's not your taxes. Remember what Stephanie Kelton was saying? Well, look, I don't want my tax dollars going towards... It doesn't go towards whatever it is you're afraid of. Your tax dollars don't go towards it. Just think of it logically. If the federal government creates its own currency and doesn't promise to exchange that currency for anything, why does it need your tax dollars? Why would it need it? How could it possibly be that it needs your cash to be able to spend? It makes no sense whatsoever. Not in the slightest way. And we've had this situation for 40 years, and no one gets on television and tells the truth about it. In 40 years? Don't tell me they don't know about it. Don't tell me it's mistake. People are dying. It's not a mistake. It's on purpose. It's by design. And it can stop. Right now, you simply have to decide. Someone told me, because I was explaining this today, and the light was going on, and they said, "But you want to give single-payer health care and a federal? You trust the government to be able to do this?" I said, "Fuck no! Of course I don't trust the government, as it is right now. If we do what we are asking, if we do what we are demanding, what we are insisting upon, we are dooming ourselves to forever being vigilant. We must forever be involved. There can never be a moment when there's not the critical mass of the population that is keeping their eye on the ball, making sure that the people that go to represent us are still in fact representing us. We will never be able to pat ourselves on the back and go home. This is forever. So no, I don't trust the government to do this. I trust we, the people, to do this, which is exactly what the government is supposed to be. We, the people. So we got two choices. You can either be unengaged and have exactly what we're having right now, in which case, why are you watching me? You're clearly okay with it. Or we get involved. We do the hard work. And the hard work is not getting the right people elected, though that's hard. The real hard work is sustaining that same effort to make sure that once they're in, they don't have a moment's peace. They get in, they get the work done, they get out. They want peace in their lifetime, they're going to have to resign their position. So they better get a lot done in that time. The guy who's running in my district, Andy Kim, I keep telling him, act like you're going to be a one-termer. If you have nothing else, what are you going to get done in one term? You got 2 years. What are you going to do? You put it all on the line. Because it's our lives on the line. So no, I don't trust government to do it, but I will trust us. So just, talking about taxes. Because people always say, if taxes don't pay for anything, if you don't need my cash, why am I paying? Well, again, remember what Stephanie Kelton said. If I spent, $1 trillion into the economy and I never took anything back, well, that's $1 trillion. That's a lot of money. What if that's inflationary? Just to give a small overarching idea of what is inflation. The simplest, imperfect, but simplest definition of inflation for the purposes of government spending. Government spending triggering inflation. If you have too many dollars chasing too few goods and services, then we can have an inflationary problem. Let's put this in perspective. Let's say that we spend and we spend and we spend and we spend. And now everyone has money. Everyone has more money than they know what to do with. And so now everyone is spending on things that they need and want and love and just throwing money here, there, and everywhere. Well, eventually, we're going to start running out of stuff to buy. And eventually, the corporations and the companies and the stores and the shops that are making all this stuff and selling all this stuff aren't going to be able to keep up with the demand. Everyone wants food, all of it. Everyone wants, iPhones and cars and all these things. I mean all of it, not just individualized things. That's not inflation. Inflation is when everything goes up. The cost of everything goes up. And if that is the result of spending, which it never 100% is, like I said, it's an imperfect analogy. But if we spend beyond the ability of the country to produce goods and services for that cash to purchase, then that's inflationary. What happens? What do we do if we do that? Well, one of the things we can do, is tax. We are facing all this demand. We are facing all this demand. So what we need to do is suck the demand out. There's too much demand. It is driving too many sales. We're overheating the economy. We're going to have to do something. So we're going to take some of that cash back. That's the first and most important part of taxation in a modern world with a fiat currency. We need to be able to balance the economy. I'm making priorities. This is what I'm going to do this year. This is how much I'm going to spend to be able to accomplish my goals this year. And at the end, we have experts that are saying, well, this may be inflationary, we may have to raise taxes, or it may even be deflationary, and we may be able to cut taxes. The point is never to balance the books. The point is to balance the economy. Second point of taxes, as Stephanie Kelton pointed out, is to be able to influence behavior. I don't like smoking. I think smoking is bad for your health. I'm not going to go so far as to ban it outright. I'm not going to be a dick that way. But I am going to say that I'm going to put a 100% tax on it. What used to cost $5 is now going to cost you $10. So if you were doing a pack a day, what used to be, $150 a month is now going to be $300 a month. That may definitely influence a lot of people to quit. So that would be a purpose for taxes, to be able to influence behavior. I want to be able to have more people driving electric cars. I will give you a tax benefit. I will help finance that purchase. And I want to be able to de-incentivize fossil fuels. So I will put a tax on fossil fuels. I'm not outlawing it. I'm simply making it less affordable. So that's the purpose of federal taxes. The other one, as she said, would be the redistribution of wealth. No one is saying that you shouldn't be rich in this country. I'm not saying it. I'm not saying I'm anti-capitalist. I'm anti-greed. And there are many, many, many areas of the economy where capitalism should not be able to get its foot in, because profit is anathema to certain areas of the country. Education, healthcare, just to name two. You should never be able to make profit off those things. You should be able to make a great living, but you should never be in the business of profit. But if you make so much money that you can actually do what should never be done by Congress and by media companies with your pocket change, your relative pocket change, well, that's a problem. You have acquired more money than you know what to do with, and you are now purchasing things that never should be purchased. So yeah, we should tax to bring things back into balance. You have too much goddamn money. I'm not taking it and giving it to these people because I don't need your money to be able to pay. This is the critical point. I am taking your money and I'm throwing it away. I'm burning it, I'm destroying it, I'm deleting it off keyboards. I don't need your money. I need you to not have quite so much. And when I pay for other things, it's new money every time. So here's another video, to help illustrate this point just a little bit.
And demand. So it would be far better to rebalance the distribution of wealth and income. A balanced economy doesn't have millions of children living in poverty. A balanced economy doesn't have infrastructure that's crumbling around you. A balanced economy doesn't have seniors who are, on fixed income living in poverty. So imagine, and we can all come up with our own definition of what a balanced economy would look like, but at least if you set the goals as objective, I want to cut the child poverty rate to 0 in 10 years' time. I want to repair every structurally deficient bridge. So that it's not structurally deficient in 2 years' time. I want to, mission-oriented, set the goals and allow the budget to help you achieve those objectives. So the budget.
So again, she's not saying I need to be able to take the money from the rich. She's saying we set an agenda. We decide what our priorities are. What do we want to accomplish? And one of the things we want to accomplish is a redistribution of wealth. We want to be able to decrease inequality because it is harmful to democracy. It is harmful to our society that we're trying to create. What are our priorities? We want to be able to make sure that we eradicate poverty. That means we need to find a way to get money into the hands of those who don't have any. Poverty is not a question of laziness or sloth. Poverty is a question of not having any money. And if you allow the capitalist class to be the ones who decide who works and who doesn't, who gets a job because I have found a profitable use for you, as opposed to everyone else, I can't make money off of your labor, so goodbye, that creates a lot of poverty. And you're putting the decisions for that creation in the hands of people who just don't fucking care, because they're already taken care of. So it's up to we the people and the government that is instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, to be able to create conditions under which everyone can thrive. And no one can thrive if you're in poverty. So we set an agenda. We don't need to create a budget, not like a household budget that has to have money first and then decide how we're going to allocate it. No. The federal government that creates its own money, its own currency, sets an agenda first and then decides how much money is needed to spend, and then creates the money with keystrokes. The government, with Congress and the president, create the bills that decide the spending. As soon as the president signs it, the Treasury instructs the Federal Reserve to be able to credit accounts. It's all done electronically. We don't need your tax dollars to be able to pay for single-payer health care. We don't need your tax dollars to get everyone a federal job guarantee. We need to send people to Congress who actually want to accomplish these things. And then we need them to understand exactly how to do it so they stop trying to make pay-fors. What happens when someone like Bernie Sanders, who I love, says that he wants to get college tuition done and he wants to pay for it, which is the rule of the game in Congress. You have to pay for it. You have to find ways to pay for it. And he'll do it by taxing Wall Street speculators. Well, taxing Wall Street speculators is the second form of taxation. We're doing it to curb behaviors. We don't want Wall Street speculating, so we will tax it. And we will take the money that comes from Wall Street speculation and we will pay for college tuition. But what happens when your plan works the way you wanted it to? You tax Wall Street to curb their desire to do a particular thing, and then they don't do that thing much anymore. You don't have the revenue anymore to pay for what you promised it was going to go to, college tuition. I don't want this, so I'll tax it, but I want this, so I'm going to pay for it. And I'm going to pay for it by penalizing the people doing the things I don't like. And when that behavior goes away, sorry, you're not going to college anymore. Whoops. Rip that out. So it's foolish to be able to try to fund taxation through so many different types of instruments. It's foolish. I remember the 90s when they were doing exactly the same thing with cigarettes. They wanted to increase taxes on cigarettes to be able to pay for health care. But if you're paying for health care through a tax designed to stop a particular behavior, what happens when it works and people stop and you don't have that revenue anymore, and now suddenly we're back to square one of no one having health care? You got to get off the gold standard thinking. You got to get off the idea of how you're going to pay for it. You got to stop it. And then, of course, people come back and say, well, but the debt and the deficit. Woo, the debt and the deficit. Well, let's talk about that for a bit.
Should play by that set of rules. Then I do a little exercise with them, and I say, okay, let's find out whether you understand the deficit and the national debt. So you would think that they would, because again, they work with money and finance. They don't have a clue. They hate it and they're mad at the deficit until I get done with them. And so here's what I do. I go in and I say, okay, I'll play the role of the government. And so I have my basically monopoly money, but it has my picture on it. And so they're Kelton bucks, right? So I'm the government, so I'm going to spend some money into the economy. You're all in the private sector of my economy, businesses, households. And so I'm going to spend 10 into the economy. So I hand someone 10. Now they have 10, right? And I say, but I'm going to collect taxes now. So I'm going to tax back 7. So they hand me back 7. And I say, what did I do? I ran a deficit. So I go and I scroll it down, -3. Government of Kelton. So now you're supposed to be very angry at me because I did this irresponsible thing called running a budget deficit. My -3, how mad are you? You're sitting there holding 3. Where'd you get it? You got it from me. And you wouldn't have that 3 if I hadn't put in more than I took out. So now they're thinking, huh. And I say, but wait, let's do it the proper way. Let's balance the budget. So give me the money back. We'll do it again. So I spend 10 in. I tax 10 out. Now I've balanced my budget. I go right down. Balanced budget, smiley face. Everybody is supposed to be happy. Are you happy? No, I missed my 3, right? I missed my 3. So I say, well, okay, hang on. Let's go do it the Clinton way, because this is what really excites the Democrats, right? Those Clinton surpluses. So but now, you have a problem, because in order for me to run a surplus, I have to collect more from you than I put back into the economy. So taxes have to be higher than government spending. So now you see yourself going into the red so that I can go into the black. So you have the deficit, I have the surplus. How do you feel? And they go, miserable, right? Give me back my deficit. So the point is, people don't have the foggiest idea. And then you do the national debt. What is the national debt? I spend 10 into the economy. I tax 7 out. You're holding 3 Kelton dollars. I hold up 3 treasuries. I also have them laminated with my picture. And these are treasuries, right? And I say, who would like to buy these 3 Kelton treasury bonds? And sure enough, the person in the audience who's got the 3 Kelton dollars that don't pay any interest would like to swap them for the treasuries, which pay interest. Now you feel even happier, because not only did I give you money, I'm subsidizing your savings with free interest money, right? Which is what's happening when the government borrows. The money to buy the bonds comes from the deficit spending itself. So you're not even out anything. You're up, your wealth is up, your income is up. The problem is with the distribution, because who holds those treasuries? They're not equitably distributed across the economy. They're mostly concentrated in the hands of the wealthy, who can afford to save and put money into investment vehicles like treasuries and so forth. So it isn't that the national debt is a bad thing, it's your asset. My liability, it's your asset, right? And you're getting a risk-free asset, and I'm paying you to have it. We could talk about why I do that.
So just remember, the federal government can never run out of money. The federal government can never go broke. It can never become insolvent. There is no mechanism, naturally. They can make bad political decisions, but there's never a way in which they cannot afford whatever is for sale in US dollars. It doesn't matter. They make the currency. They tell you what it's worth. And right now, it's worth $1. $1 to $1. They don't promise to exchange it for anything. So there was no limitation on a fiscal basis, no limitation to the size of the money pool. The money supply can be as large or as small as the federal government needs it to be, without defaulting on a promise. They only have to keep their eye on the prize, inflation. Are we making the kinds of investments today to make sure that we are not only productive enough right now to handle the money that we are spending into the economy, but that we're also making the kind of investments in infrastructure and education and healthcare, so we are continuing to be a productive society in the future. If we do that, then everything is fine. As long as we can make sure that wages rise with the cost of living. That's the problem right now. The cost of living keeps creeping up over the last 40 years, but wages are stagnant. So it's constantly more expensive for us, private citizens, to be able to keep up, to be able to finance our lives. We can't do it out of our paychecks. We have to go get loans and put it on credit cards because our wages have not kept up with the cost of living. because it's not in the best interest of the oligarchs who own all the banks and the media companies and Congress. They make billions of dollars off of all our debt. That's money for them. That's free money for them. And it's hell on earth for us. I'm just keeping this scrolling with the MMT economists. Love these guys. Keep writing these names down. There's tons of material out there. I just played a small fraction of that new talk with Stephanie Kelton. I put the link, in the description here. Please watch it, share this video. Follow Real Progressives. Follow, Steve Grumbine, myself, everyone here. Follow Ellis Winningham. Follow Stephanie Kelton at a respectful distance. Don't be a creep about it. But there's information here you absolutely positively need so that we can fight the battles we need to fight and win. In 40 years, there is no shortage of people fighting the right fights. But they are fighting it the wrong way because they are still going after things in a gold standard mentality. And we lose. We lose constantly. So please, dig deep into modern monetary theory, or at least dig deep enough so that you understand that we are not financially constrained. We are resource constrained. And when someone gets up in front of you and says, we can't afford it, you look him in the eye and says, no, I know where the dollar comes from. I know where it is created, I know how it circulates, and I know where it goes to die. You don't need my taxes to pay for things. I'm not going to allow you to go to government and then be able to make sure that we have death, starvation, and deprivation for another 40 years. Absolutely not. We are making change. We are making it right now. We are not going to be financing your wars for oil and the devastations in Syria and Palestine and all over the Middle East and South America and Central America. Not to mention the austerity that we're having right here at home. An end to poverty. The beginning of single-payer health care. You don't like the way it's done in the rest of the world? I don't give a shit. Don't do it like they do it. We can do it well, right here, perfectly. The only place on earth that will ever actually do single-payer healthcare properly. Everyone has what they need. Everyone in, no one out. Everything you need from womb to tomb. We could be the only one in the world that actually does it. I challenge you to make sure that that happens. We can do this. And we have to. I'll be back next week. I love you guys very much. There's going to be a repeat Savage Joy coming up in just a few moments. I love you guys. Take care of one another. Take care of each other. Like I said, ask me questions. Hit me up. If you got things you want me to talk about, I'm absolutely going to listen to you. I love you guys. Be good. Bye-bye. Not sure if that worked, but not at all what I'm